Max Verstappen was left dumbfounded in Miami, not just by being beaten, but by the sheer ease with which the two McLarens vanished down the road, as if they were operating under an entirely different set of rules. While Red Bull was wrestling with severe rear tire degradation, unable to maintain consistent lap times, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri were flying, clocking in over a second faster per lap, lap after lap, with zero visible signs of tire wear. It was unnatural. And for a team like Red Bull, so accustomed to dominating through tire management, it was deeply unsettling. That's when the whispers began. At first, it was just curiosity. Nothing formal, just puzzled glances and muttered conversations behind the pit wall. But curiosity quickly morphed into concern. Red Bull's engineering team began noticing thermal patterns that made no sense. Infrared cameras captured rear-end temperatures on the McLaren cars that defied standard thermodynamic behavior. Certain areas, particularly near the brake ducts, appeared far cooler than what should be possible under racing conditions. That's when things turned serious. The questions weren't just about pace anymore. They were about legality. Red Bull, usually calm under pressure, doesn't rattle easily. But what happened in Miami wasn't just a bad race. It was an anomaly. A wake-up call. Verstappen himself radioed in mid-race, not to complain, but to ask, genuinely baffled, how the McLarens were sustaining such a relentless pace without their tires falling apart. His voice didn't crack with frustration. It trembled with confusion. This wasn't about losing. This was about not understanding why. Behind closed doors, Red Bull's investigation began in earnest. They started poring over every piece of telemetry and broadcast footage. Specialized thermal imaging was deployed during the race and in park firm. What they found, or at least what they think they found, ignited a quiet storm inside the paddock. The area around the McLaren's rear brakes was registering temperatures that simply didn't add up. In theory, those components should be among the hottest on the car. Brake ducts channel heat, not cold. Cooling an entire region of the car passively, without any active system, is considered impossible. Unless, of course, someone's found a way. Some insiders believe that's exactly what McLaren has done. Not with an illegal device, necessarily, but with a clever manipulation of airflow or materials. Something so borderline, so precise, that it tiptoes right along the edge of what the regulations allow. Red Bull's engineers, known for their own aerodynamic ingenuity, were reportedly floored. According to one senior technician, this isn't just clever. It's either the smartest passive cooling design we've seen in years, or something else entirely. Something that shouldn't be there. And it's that something else that has triggered unease across the paddock. Rumors, some half-joking, others whispered in all seriousness, began to circulate that McLaren might be introducing a cooling agent into the tire or brake system. Something like water vapor or a benign chemical that mimics thermal dampening. The FIA has long since banned any form of active tire conditioning, and any system capable of manipulating heat behavior in such a way would be, on paper, illegal. But the technology and execution involved could potentially mask such activities under the guise of clever engineering. It wouldn't be the first time. Similar murmurs followed McLaren after their shocking pace in Singapore last season, but at the time, they were dismissed with chuckles and shrugs. Now, nobody's laughing. After some informal complaints raised by Red Bull, the FIA quietly began a more extensive post-race inspection of McLaren's cars in Miami. The focus was clear: the rear brake assemblies and the internal drum systems. It's not known what, if anything, was found. But the mood in the paddock shifted immediately. Team engineers from rival outfits were seen lingering longer than usual around the papaya-colored cars. Some pretended to inspect their own equipment while subtly observing McLaren's behavior. McLaren's own mechanics, usually confident and open, were suddenly brisk and guarded, closing garage shutters with haste, limiting access, lowering their voices. The atmosphere had grown thick with suspicion. Something about Miami didn't add up. Not just because Norris won, or because Piastri nearly matched him step for step. It was the how that caused concern. The way the McLaren glided across the asphalt while others slid like they were skating on melted rubber. The way it maintained pace with no drop-off. The eerie silence coming from a team that suddenly seemed to know something no one else did. Whether McLaren has genuinely discovered a brilliant legal edge or pushed too far into gray territory remains unclear. But one thing is certain. Red Bull, and perhaps the entire paddock, will not rest until they find out. No formal protest has been filed, at least not yet. But make no mistake, Red Bull is turning up the pressure behind the scenes. And it's not just about suspicious brake temperatures anymore. What's really keeping them up at night is something far bigger. How McLaren, almost out of nowhere, has leapt into a league of its own on circuits notorious for high tire wear. Let's cut through the noise. If McLaren has managed to engineer a solution that keeps their rear tires operating within a narrow, optimal thermal window, while everyone else is watching their rubber disintegrate, then this isn't a marginal gain. It's a paradigm shift. A breakthrough with the potential to redefine the championship battle. And Red Bull is fully aware of the implications. The raw data from Miami tells a story that no PR statement or clever excuse can erase. In the most critical sections of the race, both Norris and Piastri were clocking over a full second per lap faster than Verstappen. That kind of gap has nothing to do with tire brand, driver input, or race strategy. That's precision engineering. System-level performance that points to something revolutionary under the bodywork. Christian Horner, Red Bull's team principal, has remained publicly composed, choosing his words with care in front of the media. But sources close to the team paint a different picture behind closed doors, describing him as irate, deeply concerned, and relentless in his push for answers. The calm exterior is classic Horner. But the team's actions say more than their silence. They're in investigation mode, and they're going deep. When questioned about McLaren's sudden rise in performance, particularly in high-degradation environments, Horner deflected with a diplomatic tone. Look, in Formula One, there are always technical curiosities. Last year, McLaren was pointing fingers at our front suspension design. Every team is constantly scrutinizing the competition. It's part of the game. But not everyone at Red Bull is keeping things so diplomatic. Helmut Marko, the team's outspoken advisor, has taken a far less subtle approach. In a recent interview with Austrian media, he hinted, thinly veiled, that certain teams have somehow managed to crack the degradation code overnight. With a sharp smirk, he added, "We've seen gimmicks before. We know the signs. We know what to look for." What Red Bull is implying, without saying it outright, is that McLaren's sudden transformation has raised more than just eyebrows, it's raised alarm bells. The concern isn't jealousy. It's suspicion. It's disbelief that a team could make this kind of leap so abruptly, especially on tracks where tire management has historically been the great equalizer. The paddock may still be quiet on the surface, but under the polished veneers and rehearsed interviews, a storm is building. Red Bull doesn't cry foul unless they smell smoke. And right now, they're convinced there's a fire burning under the papaya-colored bodywork of McLaren's MCL-38. It's vintage Red Bull, an age-old blend of subtle accusation wrapped in strategic pressure. When they can't beat you on the racetrack, they'll try to beat you through the rulebook. And now, with the FIA already poking around inside McLaren's garage, it might not take much more than a nudge to turn suspicion into sanction. But McLaren isn't flinching. Andrea Stella, the composed and measured team principal of the Woking-based outfit, calmly brushed off the growing storm of speculation. "We're proud of our development path. Everything we've introduced is fully compliant with the regulations," he told media post-race with the calm certainty of a man who believes his house is in order. Zak Brown, never one to hold back, went even further, calling out Red Bull's insinuations as nothing more than distractions. There's a proper way to challenge another team's legality, and that's through formal protest. You file the paperwork, disclose the basis of the claim, and post a financial bond. That's how it works. These half-whispered accusations, floated just to destabilize us, shouldn't be allowed to dominate the conversation. But here's the truth. At this point, it almost doesn't matter whether McLaren broke any rules or not. Perception in Formula One can be just as impactful as fact. The seed of doubt has already been sown. And often, that alone is enough to shift momentum. Should the FIA uncover anything at all, that could be interpreted as a performance advantage not explicitly allowed in the regulations, McLaren's results from Miami could be scrutinized, if not outright challenged. That scenario opens the door to a cascade of chaos. On the other hand, if McLaren gets a clean bill of health, as early signs suggest will be the case, the narrative flips entirely. Suddenly, Red Bull doesn't look like the team enforcing fairness. They look like the reigning champions who got bested, fair and square, and didn't like the taste of it. And that narrative stings. Especially for Max Verstappen. 4 world titles in, Verstappen is used to being the hunter and the overlord, used to having the technological edge, the tire mastery, the secrets no one else can quite decode. Watching McLaren outmaneuver Red Bull in Miami, on race pace, strategy, and tire life, was not just surprising. It was unsettling. More painful than a botched pit stop or a wrong call on tire compounds. This wasn't a tactical error. This was being outclassed. Max didn't lash out after the race. He didn't point fingers or stir controversy. But in classic Verstappen fashion, he let his silence do the talking. No smiles. No jokes. Just lap times, telemetry reports, and a subtle air of disbelief that his all-conquering team may have been left behind. Red Bull, for the first time in years, is preparing for a fight off the circuit. And they might need to. Because if McLaren's brake duct architecture really is as groundbreaking as whispers suggest, it could revolutionize how teams think about tire strategy. Rear tire temperature in Miami wasn't just important, it was everything. It shaped pace, pit stop windows, and overtaking opportunities. And in that arena, McLaren didn't just participate. They owned it. Red Bull wasn't even in the frame. So where does that leave us? Red Bull's been here before. They've written this playbook: double diffusers, flexi wings, engine mapping exploits. They know the gray areas. They know the politics. But this time, they're not the ones in the shadows pulling the strings. They're on the outside looking in. Meanwhile, McLaren stands calm, visibly and internally. They say they've done their homework, improved their suspension, tweaked their brake assemblies, refined their aerodynamic package. But no one in the paddock really believes this leap is just the result of routine upgrades. Not when the pace differential is this dramatic. And that's why the pressure is only beginning to build. If the FIA even hints at a gray area in McLaren's setup, it will validate Red Bull's suspicions and fuel a storm. If not, brace for an engineering arms race the likes of which we haven't seen in years. Brake duct designs will be dissected, replicated, and pushed to the regulatory limits. Because when one system works this well, the rest of the grid doesn't wait, they pounce. So don't let the lack of an official protest fool you. The war is already underway. It's being waged behind closed doors, through thermal imaging, in all-night technical debriefs, and whispered briefings. The question is no longer just whether McLaren is legal. The real question is Red Bull ready to fight this new McLaren? Not just a faster McLaren, but one that may be smarter, leaner, and more innovative than the champions themselves. And if they're not? Then what we saw in Miami might just be the first visible crack in the armor of Formula One's most dominant team. A fracture exposed not by controversy, but by unrelenting pace, and a brake system that, suspiciously or not, may have changed the game. So what do you think? Is McLaren simply that damn clever? Or did they stumble across a loophole no one else dared to exploit? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to smash that next video on your screen. Because this season isn't cooling down. It's just heating up.